There is a moment, and if you've ever been in love, you know exactly which moment I'm talking about, where everything feels perfect, where the texts are coming in fast, where he's making plans, where he looks at you like you're the only person in the room. And then almost out of nowhere, something shifts. He gets quiet. The calls slow down. He seems distracted, distant, like he's somewhere else, even when he's standing right in front of you. And your brain, your anxious, overthinking, beautiful brain, immediately goes to the worst place possible. Did I do something wrong? Is he losing interest? Is there someone else? You replay every conversation. You analyze every text. You wonder if you were too available, too honest, too much, or maybe not enough. And the more you think about it, the more anxious you get. And the more anxious you get, the more you want to reach out to fix it, to pull him back close, because the silence feels unbearable. I'm Sophia, and today I want to talk to you about something that changed everything for me, and for so many women I've spoken to, because here's what nobody tells you. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, a man pulling away has absolutely nothing to do with losing interest. In fact, sometimes it happens because he's falling harder. And understanding why that happens, what's actually going on inside him when he goes quiet, can be the difference between accidentally pushing him further away and becoming the woman he never wants to leave. So stay with me, because this goes deeper than most people are willing to go. First, let's talk about what's actually happening inside him. To understand why men pull away at the exact moment things are going well, you have to understand something fundamental about how many men are wired emotionally. And I want to be careful here, because I'm not talking about every man, and I'm not making excuses for bad behavior. What I am doing is giving you a window into a pattern that is real, that is common, and that most men themselves don't even fully understand. For a lot of men, especially those who haven't done deep emotional work on themselves, falling in love is terrifying. Not exciting terrifying, like a roller coaster. More like standing at the edge of a cliff terrifying. Because love means vulnerability. And vulnerability means the possibility of getting hurt. And for someone who has spent most of his life being told by culture, by other men, by his upbringing, that showing emotion is weakness, that needing someone is dangerous, that depending on a woman will only lead to pain. Falling for you feels like a threat, not a threat from you specifically. A threat to the carefully constructed wall he's built around himself. Think about it this way. Imagine you've lived your whole life protecting yourself from something. You've gotten really good at it. You've built routines, habits, a certain kind of independence that feels safe. And then one day, someone comes along and starts to crack that wall, not by force, but just by being. By laughing a certain way, by remembering the small things, by making him feel seen in a way that's unfamiliar and overwhelming at the same time. That's not comfortable for someone who has never learned to sit with emotional intensity. That's actually destabilizing. And when people feel destabilized, they do what humans have always done. They retreat. They go back to what's familiar. They create distance to get their bearings. This is what pulling away often is. It's not rejection, it's regulation. He's trying to manage feelings he doesn't have the tools to process. The stages where this happens most now, not all pulling away is the same. The timing tells you a lot. And I want to walk you through the moments where this is most likely to happen, because if you can recognize them, you won't panic. And not panicking is genuinely one of the most powerful things you can do. Stage 1, right after a really good time together. You had an incredible date. Maybe it was the first time things felt truly real between you. The conversation went deep. There was real chemistry, real connection. You went home floating, and then he goes quiet for a couple of days and you spiral. What's actually happening here is that the intensity of that connection triggered something in him. He felt it too, maybe even more deeply than you realized, and now his nervous system is processing it. He's not retreating from you. He's retreating from the feeling just long enough to catch his breath. Stage 2, right when things start to get serious. This is the one that breaks the most hearts. Things have been going beautifully for weeks or months. You've both been showing up consistently. And then you have a conversation about the future, or even just an implied sense that this is heading somewhere real, and boom, he pulls back. This is often the moment where men who genuinely care about you also genuinely frighten themselves. Because now it's not hypothetical anymore. Now there's something real to lose. And the brain, when it senses something precious, sometimes responds not with warmth and openness, but with fear and protection. Stage 3, right after deep emotional intimacy. Not physical, emotional. He told you something he's never told anyone. He let you see a part of him that he usually keeps locked away. And then afterward, he pulled back. Maybe he seemed a little cold, a little removed, a little like he was putting the wall back up brick by brick. This is one of the most misunderstood patterns in relationships. What happened is that he went further emotionally than he's used to going, and now he feels exposed, vulnerable. And that vulnerability is uncomfortable enough that he needs to recalibrate, to feel like himself again, to not feel quite so seen. What your reaction to his pulling away actually does. Here's the part where I want to get really honest with you, because this is where most women, including me, before I understood this, make the mistake that actually costs them the relationship. When he pulls away, your instinct is to chase, to reach out more, to send the extra text, to ask what's wrong, to try to fix the distance. And I understand that instinct completely because anxiety in relationships is real and it's painful, and doing something feels better than doing nothing. But here's what chasing actually communicates to him energetically, even if your words are perfectly calm and reasonable. I am not okay with space. I need reassurance constantly. I cannot hold myself together when you're not fully present. And that not because you're weak, but because of how emotional dynamics work, actually increases his urge to pull back further. Because now, instead of having space to breathe and come back to you naturally, he feels a subtle pressure. And pressure, for someone who's already feeling overwhelmed by the intensity of his own feelings, makes him go further into his shell, not less. It becomes a cycle. He pulls away, you chase, he pulls away more, you chase harder. And before long, the beautiful dynamic you had starts to feel suffocating to him and abandoning to you. And neither of you wanted that, but both of you created it. Him by not communicating and you by not trusting. What to do instead? And this is the part that changes everything. I want you to hear this next part, not as a strategy, not as a game, but as something that is genuinely true and genuinely liberating. The most attractive thing you can do when a man pulls away is to let him while staying rooted in yourself. That doesn't mean pretending you don't care. It doesn't mean playing it cool or going cold or punishing him with silence. It means something much more powerful than any of that. It means trusting yourself enough to not need his constant presence to feel okay. It means having a life so rich and full and meaningful that his temporary distance is an inconvenience, not a crisis. Because here's what that communicates to him, not in words, but in energy, in behavior, in the way you carry yourself. I am not afraid of space. I am secure in who I am. I am not going anywhere, but I also do not need to be chased after. That is magnetic, genuinely, deeply magnetic. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're actually hard to lose, which is a completely different thing. When you stop chasing and start living, a few things happen. First, you give him the space to actually miss you. And missing you, feeling the specific absence of you, is often what cuts through the noise in his head and brings him back. Second, you stop reinforcing the idea that your peace depends on his behavior, which is not only attractive, but also true and healthy. And third, you reclaim your own power in the dynamic. You stop being the one who needs reassurance and become the one who knows her own worth, with or without his validation. But what if it's not healthy pulling away? How do you tell the difference? I have to be honest about this part, because not all pulling away is the beautiful, he's falling for you kind. Some pulling away is a pattern. Some men use distance as a way to avoid real commitment. Some create just enough intimacy to keep you hooked, and then retreat just enough to avoid responsibility. And that is not the same thing at all. Here's how you tell the difference. If it's the healthy kind, the kind that comes from being overwhelmed by genuine feeling, he comes back. Not immediately, maybe, but he comes back, and when he does, he's present. He re-engages. He might even acknowledge that he needed some time. He shows you, through his actions over time, that what he feels for you is real, and that the distance was temporary, not a pattern. If it's the unhealthy kind, the distance becomes a rhythm. He pulls away, you chase, he comes back just enough to reset your anxiety, and then he pulls away again. There's no real deepening. There's no real forward movement. It's a loop. And if you find yourself in that loop, the answer is not to chase harder or love more or try to be more understanding. The answer is to stop participating in the loop entirely. Because you deserve someone who is as brave about loving you as you are about loving them. Here's what I really want to leave you with. The conversation around why men pull away often gets framed as a woman's problem to solve. Like it's your job to figure out his emotional landscape, navigate his fears, manage his withdrawal, and love him in exactly the right way so he doesn't run. And I reject that completely. Yes, understanding him helps. Yes, not panicking helps. Yes, giving space helps. All of that is real and true. But the deeper truth is this: you cannot be the emotional education for a man who isn't willing to grow. You cannot be patient enough or understanding enough or secure enough to make someone commit who isn't ready to do the inner work that commitment requires. What you can do is know yourself deeply enough to recognize the difference between a man who is temporarily overwhelmed by how much he feels for you and a man who is using emotional unavailability as a permanent shield. And then, with that clarity, make a choice that honors your own worth. Because here's the thing about women who truly understand their value: they don't wait indefinitely. They give grace, they give space, they give time, but they don't give their entire lives away to someone who can't decide if they're worth showing up for. What this looks like in real life. I want to make this practical for you because theory is beautiful, but you need something you can actually use. The next time he pulls away, before you reach for your phone to send that text, pause, take a breath. Ask yourself honestly, is this man over time showing me that he is moving toward me or away from me? Not in this one moment, over time. Because one moment of distance in a relationship that is generally growing and deepening is very different from a pattern of hot and cold that never really resolves. If the overall trajectory is toward you, let him breathe. Fill that space with things that light you up, your friendships, your goals, your creative life, the things that make you you before any man ever entered the picture. Not as a distraction, but as a return to yourself. Because the version of you that is fully alive in her own life is the version of him he fell for in the first place. If the overall trajectory is away from you, or if you genuinely cannot tell after months of trying, then the conversation you need to have is not, why are you pulling away, but what are we actually building here? And are we building it together? Not with anger, not with ultimatums born of fear, but with the quiet, grounded confidence of a woman who knows what she wants and is no longer afraid to ask for it directly. I want to say something to the version of you who has been sitting with this anxiety for a while. The version who has been reading into every text response, every delay, every shift in his energy, and wondering what you did wrong. You probably didn't do anything wrong. Loving people openly is not a flaw. Wanting connection is not a flaw. Feeling scared when someone you care about goes quiet, that is not weakness. That is humanity. But you do not have to live in that anxiety. You do not have to make yourself smaller to keep someone comfortable with their own fears. And you do not have to earn the love of someone who is genuinely falling for you. Because real love, the kind that is worth your time and your heart and your energy, doesn't require you to shrink. It requires you to expand, to be more yourself, not less. To stand in your truth with warmth and openness and, yes, boundaries. And let the right person rise to meet you there.